Good day everyone, it's Caitlin, and today on Mending Monday, we're going to talk about mending threadbare spots and small holes. Alright, I'm here in basically what's now the mending corner with my sewing box, which is kind of my mending box. I do have a sewing room, and my mending box, or basket really. And it's just a round basket. I've seen similar ones in 1800 paintings, round cylindrical about this height with a lid, and I use it for my mending. And Lady has come by because she hears me talking. And since we're alone this week, she thinks that when I talk it's for her. So I pulled out a few pieces here that have some smaller holes and threadbare spots. So spots where, and what I mean by threadbare is it's not necessarily a hole, there is some thread still there, but it's fairly well worn. Cream colored parts are still there, so it would be considered threadbare because the thread is a bit bare, as opposed to more of a hole, which this apron also has, I believe. This is my oldest apron, so I'm surprised this lasted this long. Actually, there may not be a hole. Small little rip right there. So you see there is no thread, it is an actual hole. My fingers are getting done. And I have some other pieces that we're going to mend as well. Right there where my finger is. So threads are missing, but there are still threads there. So it's not a hole. And this is what a similar spot's going to look like after we mend it. I'm going to use a color that closely matches what I'm mending. I don't usually keep this color. I usually keep the basics. But this was in a sewing machine that I already purchased, and it matches this very closely. So we're going to go ahead and use it. Thread my needle. So when you're working with threadbare spots, you still have thread that's there. It's not a full-on hole. It's just a little spot where there's all the white threads in this one are here. None of the red ones, just from this little 1/2 inch. So how we're going to work with this, and we also have a spot over here where a lot of the red threads are almost gone. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with my thread about 1/4 inch-ish above where the threadbare part starts. And I'm going to take teeny tiny little running stitches. Now to me these are normal running stitches. I spend enough time teaching people now that you have to say teeny tiny for most people nowadays. So I've done a whole row basically from about 1/4 inch all the way around. We're basically going to do a 1/4 inch all the way around the threadbare spot. So I started 1/4 inch above, about 1/4 inch off, and then I ended about 1/4 inch over on that side. So I went just a row that way. Now we're going to go back the other way, about 1/8 of it or 1/16 of an inch away from the first line of thread. And again, tiny little running stitches all the way down. Oops, got my finger. Okay, pull that through. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back and forth until we hit about right here. So about 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch or whatever from where the threadbare part stops. Already that's strengthened, so that feels really nice. Now what we're going to do is do the same thing, except go the other direction. So we went long ways against, oh, okay. I'm going to use some technical terms. We went across the weft, and then now we're going to go across the warp. So when you're weaving, what goes on the loom is your warp, and what you weave with, the back and forth, is the weft. And I remember that because weft rhymes with left, and when you're going back and forth, you're going from left to right, right to left. So weft and weft rhyme. So we went the up and down, and now we're going to go across, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, all the way up till when we, about 1/4 inch again away from where the threadbare space stops. The smaller your stitches, the better this mending is going to work, and the stronger that your garment will be. So more is usually better in this situation. So the first sign of you seeing anything becoming threadbare, this is what you need to do to strengthen the area. And it is less noticeable than a full-on mend of a hole. So if you let it get to a whole spot, you're going to be noticing that mend a little bit more than if you had just done this when you first saw the threadbare spot. When you reach the end, or the end of the part you're going to do, you have a couple of options. You can stop here. So if your spot was really small, you don't really need a lot of work, you can stop here. You can also just go back one more time on the spots that were really threadbare to give it a little extra strength. You can also start doing it catty corner, so just going on the bias and just kind of doing it on the edge there and kind of going back. Give it a lot of strength. It's really up to you and what you want to do. I'm just going to go back because this part right here was the worst. So I think I'm just going to go from here to right here and then call it good. Because I feel like this needs just a little bit more. All right, when we're done, pull it out. Cut with the remaining of your thread. And then that should be what it looks like. Still somewhat noticeable, but not really when it's being worn. The back side should look just about the same. Alright, there was a tiny little one. Okay, there's a couple tiny little ones. I already got that one. So let's try it on a smaller spot. There's this little tiny bit right here. About 1/8 of an inch over. That 1/8 of an inch. Or even a 1/16 of an inch. Really, the smaller and the closer together your stitches are, the better it's going to look when you're done. And when you get it done, if it still looks a little bit threadbare, like there's still small little holes that you can see patches through, go back over it. There's nothing saying that you can't go back over it, do it twice. Now with small, teeny tiny holes like this one, you just barely see my finger, you can do the same thing. I wouldn't do this on large holes, but on small ones, I would say less than a fingertip width. But of course, going about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch on either side is going to give the thread that's still there a little chance to stay stronger. And with holes especially, you're probably going to want to make more than one pass. What you're trying to do is add thread back in where the thread of the fabric is missing. And when you're done, just cut off the thread. And you should have a less noticeable hole now. Alright, now we have a bit of a hole. Now this particular hole isn't a true hole. It's really, the fabric's all there. It's just a rip, most likely, basically. So we're going to kind of do our same thing, our little tiny running stitch. Up and down, kind of reattaching what was ripped. I think this garment got washed while it was ripped, which is never a good thing. That's why the threads are a little bit out there. So I know we've talked about this before, but when you get started with the mending household, a very important step is that you mend before you wash, because washing will make the wear and the tears back worse. So make sure that you are mending before you wash. It would look a lot neater had I not washed this garment with that hole. And I can cut away loose threads if I need to, but I'd rather not, because whatever thread you do have is helping the garment be a little stronger than it would normally. Alright, now my apron is mended. I think that's all the holes. Something that's really helpful if you have a light in the background to kind of look through your fabric and see if you see any other worn, threadbare, or small holes. I think that one's good. Alright, I have a pair of leggings. I was doing chores this morning and I ripped them against some barbed wire. So, right there. Little tiny hole. We're going to do the same thing. These are brown leggings. I am using black thread because I can't find my brown thread, which is fine. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Now with knitted goods, like these are, there's a way you can do it where you're basically, taking the, where you're basically doing some knitting and remaking those stitches so you still have a fully knitted garment. With something this small, it's not worth my time, quite frankly, because it is very hard to see all those little stitches. So we're just going to do it this way. Also, small tip, if you do have frayed edges, if when you get to the hole, you put your needle on top of the fabric, it'll put the frayed edges on the bottom or on the back of your mend. Now, if you have really thick threads, like you've washed the garment, like with the last one, that's not really going to hide anything. But if you just ripped it and you're just trying to hide it a little bit more, you have a little bit some frayed edges, put the raw edge underneath the needle, and that'll definitely help. Alright, there's the mend. So I'm going to take that out. There we go. It's slightly noticeable because I pulled on the fabric a little more than I should have, but there's no hole anymore, so it's less noticeable than the hole. Alright, last thing, I have a sock for my husband that just has a tiny little hole and a little bit of threadbare spot in the toe. I'm actually quite proud of this because he handed them to me while they just had the small hole instead of giant gaping holes in the back, which is what I usually mend. He has some Civil War socks that are more darn than sock at this point. Now, if you had a darning egg or something, you can use that. I'm just going to use my hand because it's what I got available at the moment, although I do have a darning egg in that cabinet next to me. Alright, you know what? We are going to use the darning egg. Why not? Let's learn how to use a darning egg. This is what it should look like. There's also darning mushrooms. You can use absolutely anything you have that's slightly round. It's going to kind of mimic the shape of a foot or toe. It doesn't have to be exactly an egg. I am technically mending this on the incorrect side, because this is the wrong side of the sock, but it'll all work out. You can probably see a little bit better what I'm doing when it's on the egg. Now, because I'm mending this inside out, or darning this inside out, what we're going to do is, instead of putting the needle on top of the raw edges, we're going to put them on the bottom, because we're doing this inside out. What I'm going to go ahead and do, since I have such a hole, I'm going to go back in between all of my rows that I just did. Oops, I didn't quite go far enough for that one. To really make it almost like a fabric. And I've misplaced the other sock. I think it might be in my husband's scarf still, and he's not here, so we're just going to mend one sock today, and I'll mend the second one when he gets home, which won't be for a couple days. Now, you do want to hold the egg to where it's not going to, because this is a hole and there should be space here, you don't want to pull the edges together. That's going to create a dart type effect where it won't fit quite right. And that's not what you want to do. Okay. And that's just a threadbare spot. Alright, now we could go this other way. Knitted garments are not as fun because they tend to stretch on you. And this is a slightly bigger hole, so we're going to have to make quite a few more passes just to make sure that it's all covered and that we have no little tiny holes. Nice thing about the darning egg is you can actually see because it's darker underneath where a darning egg is. So if I see dark, that means I haven't mended this quite well enough. There are better and other ways to mend socks or darn socks that are more appropriate. I tend to use this method because it's the fastest, even though it's not the best method. And the reason is, men go through socks like nobody's business. It's kind of ridiculous, and I'm not going to spend my time really mending something and spending more time on something when it's not going to last maybe a couple more wears before I have to do it again. But that looks about good. So I'm going to take it off. You can see no hole, at least. Okay, take that out. And that's what we see on the front side. No hole, at least, so that's better. That's a lot better, so that should last at least a couple more wears before I'll need to do that again. And it prevents the hole from getting bigger. Alright, and there we have it. 3 little projects mended, and that is one way to mend a garment that has worn or threadbare spots. It's an easy method. You do not need any tools. You don't even need the darning egg if you really don't have one. You can use almost anything, including your fingers, if you needed to. And it helps your wardrobe last a lot longer, so you are able to afford to invest in quality pieces that will last longer. And as you mend those, it will last even longer than that. Thank you so much for joining me today as we mended some worn and threadbare spots. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Click that little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next one.